Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and thanks for stopping by. Our dedicated team will guide you through with the latest updates and theories at Starbase, Texas. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon for future streams.
Hello, everybody. My name is Zach Golden, and welcome to another Starbase Weekly live stream. We have a great show for y'all today, as always. Happy to be back with y'all this week. As you guys know, I usually take 2 weeks off in between my work schedule, so I am back this week and been slowly getting caught up on things, but there sure is a lot to talk about this week, and apologize if I end up being a little bit behind on some of the topics, but thankfully we have Ryan Weber here today to help us out. Ryan Weber, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure as always, Zach. A lot of interesting things to talk about this week, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And some of you may recognize Ryan's voice from some of the NSF live streams. So, like the crossovers between channels, it's really awesome working together like that. So, again, thank you for being here with us. And
Yeah,
we also have Astro Joe with us today, who will be handling questions and donations for us as always. So, Astro Joe, thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. Nice to be here with you, Zach and Ryan. Let's enjoy the show, y'all.
Awesome. Yeah. And Ryan and I decided that we wanted to start off the show a little differently than we normally do because there is some big current event items that we can talk about this week. So instead of saving that towards the end of the show, we figured we would go ahead and talk about it now. So before we get into that really quick, I do want to note that this was a difficult flyover this week. As y'all can see, there was tons of clouds up in the sky. And while it does look like, there's lots of gaps, it is very difficult shooting between those gaps because you're shooting from above the clouds. So this is kind of a side view right here. But once you're over them, you're really shooting in between the gaps in the clouds. And so instead of sitting there waiting to get one shot, a lot of times you end up just shooting in between all those gaps and hoping that you kind of hit all of the areas that you're aiming for. But Mauricio does a really good job of this, not his first rodeo. So just wanted to point that out because some of the images are slightly grainy, but we do have tons of great shots that will help us along the way. We're going to go ahead and start with the news of the week, which I guess this actually started last week to some degree. But as most of you, or some of you have probably heard, SpaceX is now expecting a much longer delay before the next flight than what we were all initially hoping for. There was some questions about whether or not the delays were due to infrastructure related items as far as getting the chopsticks ready for the first catch attempt. But now we know that there are also some other setbacks that are happening as well too, and most of those are related to environmental concerns related to the deluge system. So I actually took some time to read through this report earlier this week, and I got a bunch of windows open, so we're going to be bouncing back and forth between a lot of things. But this report was released by the EPA, and so this is kind of related to SpaceX's compliance or lack thereof as it relates to some of the environmental rules that they have, and specifically with discharge of waste material. And in this case, they're specifically talking about water from the deluge system and liquid oxygen as well too. So a little bit further down in this report, I'm not going to go through all of this stuff up here, but they did list specific line items of each individual event which SpaceX is being fined for, which is nice because now we're not sitting here guessing on what exactly they're referring to. And, you know, Ryan, before we get into this, there was a previous, I remember the previous fine that we knew of was for like $3,000. What was that about? Because I don't know if this is two separate things or if that was just like a vast underestimate.
TCEQ one? You mean?
Yeah, I believe so.
Because that one's the state deluge one, for not having the correct permit.
Okay, so this is different then.
And I think there was another one from the EPA, but I don't remember that one. There might have been.
Okay. Yeah. So in this one, they do list a bunch of specific events. One up at the top, which I don't think a lot of people know of, or some of you may remember. I don't think anybody really covered it too much, but the first item that they listed on here is the July 11th liquid oxygen discharge. And so this was basically the same day as the Booster 7 anomaly when it had that little accident on the pad. And I'm not going to play that whole video, but I do have some footage from that. And this is actually from NASA Spaceflight's live stream related to the event. So first you had the actual explosion, which occurred around, I want to say 4:20-ish in the afternoon. And so I'll just play this explosion. I feel like I've seen this like a million times. But just for reference for anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about, this is the event which occurred. And so I think basically what happened here is that after that explosion, they weren't really sure on whether or not the vehicle and the propellant system was safe to actually detank the vehicle. And so the detank process went on for a very, very long time. And one of the things that occurred during that was an actual liquid oxygen dump. And I'm going to turn the volume down here, even though I don't think y'all can hear it. So this is the liquid oxygen dump, which occurred about an hour after that explosion. And so this is basically, there's two valves on the bottom of the booster, which allow it to basically dump out its liquid oxygen tank, which is funny in a way. If some of y'all have seen my latest episode about having to vacuum out the water from the bottom of the booster, that was definitely a joke for a lot of reasons. And one of those reasons is because I'm pretty sure, at least with the booster, they can just dump out whatever is left in the tank. Of course, we now know they would probably be at risk of some sort of violation, although as far as water goes, I think most of it, anything that's dumped in this area would end up in the retention pond because it's actually landing on the pad. But in this case, this was quite a bit of liquid oxygen that was dumped out of the vehicle. And you can actually see that it ended up starting a fire over near the bottom of the integration tower. Essentially, you're dumping an oxidizer on top of I think it was a generator that was over here. And so that ended up causing the generator to essentially explode because you're putting it in an environment that it's not supposed to be in, essentially. But yeah, so throughout this detank essentially. As I said, not being sure whether or not they could safely detank through the booster QD. This is um, a safety feature, and also, we assume they may use it at some other points during flight, but primarily, as far as we're concerned, it's kind of a safety feature to allow them to detank the liquid oxygen tank without having access to the booster QD. So, this is basically that event which they mentioned for that 36,000 gallons of liquid oxygen. So I'm going to go back to this, and the remaining incidents were all related to tests of the deluge system, in which for all of the deluge tests, it seems they've estimated about 45,000 gallons of water discharged into the wetlands. And I believe for the launches, they're estimating about 37,000 gallons. So that number is kind of repeated multiple times. I think there's what's this? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different occurrences that they're talking about here. A little lower than I was expecting, but 8 different occurrences here. And for the sum total of these violations, I believe the fine is $148,378. So I do want to get Ryan's thoughts on this because, obviously this is where we're at right now. This is a big part of the situation when it comes to getting the next launch license, I believe. And so I guess the question is, how much of an effect do you think this is having currently?
Well, in terms of the deluge, I think they just have to sort their paperwork out in terms of going forward with this pad. And then, of course, when they finish Pad B, which we'll get to later, make sure the proper paperwork is done to begin with, rather than possibly assuming or whatever the miscommunication was. I mean, there's a lot of unanswered questions regarding all this, but most likely SpaceX can still use this and fly. They might just have to pay another fine to the EPA. They do have permission to use it from the TCEQ to fly more. So that's kind of where they're at this point with the deluge. The whole other delay is, well, that's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, and I do want to mention something here about this deluge test. So really the whole reason this is a problem is because of this corner of the pad right here, where the water essentially actually, it's more than just that. So it's basically 180 degrees of the actual circumference of, I guess, or the radius of where this goes. So 180 degrees of where it overshoots the pad. So they do have a retention pond over here, but it does overshoot the retention pond. So all of the water that ends up out in this area is the problem. And unfortunately, this wouldn't be a problem if they, had permission to do what they were intending on doing in the first place, which was to construct their retention pond over in this area. I think they still have not gotten permission to expand out in that area, and that's, I don't know. I think they've kind of knew that they were going to be overshooting it, but also were lacking the ability to do anything about it. So it's coming down to do we just not launch until we get permission, or do we just accept the fines that are going to come with this? And to tell you guys the truth, that is something that's pretty common in most industrial settings, where you're going to get a fine, but you don't want to go through the process of having to wait for as long as it takes for all that paperwork to go through. And so you kind of just accept, you budget the fines into your, yearly expenditures. So, as unfortunate as that sounds, that's kind of just what it is. And it's not uncommon at all. And so, sorry, Ryan, you were saying?
Well, I mean, there's the other side to this, to the delay itself. Besides the I don't think the deluge is delaying it. I think that, as you were talking about, it's just a set of paperwork, and they'll continue to use it until they get the proper permit and continue to pay the fine. I mean, it doesn't hurt SpaceX at all, especially how much money they spend on the program. That the money they're going to get fined is nothing.
Right.
But the biggest thing is um,
Stage ring.
the hot stage ring and the environmental issues that are associated with that in terms of causing another 60-day review, delaying the launch for another 2 months.
Right.
Because apparently, whether it was simulation data or data from Flight 4 or whatever it was, SpaceX found something that that they got new data and they submitted it to the FAA, and the FAA went, okay, we need to take a longer look at this and to bring in some other agencies to consult and take a look at it. My question to that, though, would be, because it sounded like they were ready to go mid-September. It sounded like they were going to fly. And then all of a sudden, they weren't. So I'm kind of curious when they learned that information, or if the FAA, when the FAA was told this, or there's a lot of
Right.
unknown questions here. But
Yeah, and so to expand on that a little bit, related to the hot stage ring, so it's really about the impact area of where that ring is going to land. And just to keep in mind, this is a 10-meter wide or 9-meter wide ring. It's about 30 feet wide, and it's weighs about 10 tons. So it's not small by any means. And so during um, the third and fourth flight tests, the hot stage ring kind of ended up somewhere in this area right here at the bottom of the screen. And so the reason it ended up there is because the boost back burn essentially ends at the top of this arc right here. So this is where the boost back burn ends. And the hot stage ring is ejected after that, right? And it's also ejected in this direction towards the launch site because that's the direction that the booster is facing. So during the return to launch site landing attempt, this profile is going to look a lot different. It's going to end up arcing way back over here, essentially, somewhere in this area. And this is basically the point wherever this boost back burn ends is where that ring is gonna be ejected. And so at this point, you're basically on like a ballistic trajectory, both the booster and the hot stage ring. And so depending on how you eject it, I mean, I don't think there's really much you can do other than putting a parachute on it to prevent this from happening. But it is going to continue traveling in this direction to some unknown distance, right? And so instead of landing over in this area out here, it's probably going to be somewhere in this area. And I don't think it's a zero chance that it potentially could actually impact on land, but it doesn't seem like that's what they're expecting. They're mostly worried about the fish in the area where this is going to impact, like how that will affect the fish population. So one thing that Ryan did mention is that in the area where it came down over here, this is likely a lot deeper versus over in this area. It's significantly shallower, being closer to land. So the I guess environmental setting in which it's going to be landing is definitely very different. I don't know. It's crazy to me, like thinking about how to actually quantify the impact, and I'm actually surprised that they aren't able to do that quickly, anyways, because I'm pretty sure that they had to um, measure density of different fish populations throughout this entire corridor, because you're also not just worried about where the booster would come down, but where the full stack would come down in the event of a RUD. So I'm pretty sure that they know the densities in this entire area, and it's interesting that they can't just, um, assign a risk value to the predicted landing point.
yeah, part of me thinks that since it is getting so close to land with that, their data might have found that there's a chance that it hits the wetlands or the beach. I wouldn't rule it out because it's an uncontrollable puck of steel that actually has some lift to it. So who even knows where it would land? So I'm gonna guess that's the delay. Um, and it's a 60-day evaluation. So
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to just throw a parachute on the bottom of the hot stage ring in order to control its landing. I wonder if that would reduce the um,
Just
the need to
drag and
actually
shoot.
evaluate this. Yeah,
Yeah, just strap it to the bottom of the reinforcements under it, and then
yeah,
when it ejects, you literally deploy the drogue and deploy the chute, and there you go. Now you can control it a little bit.
yeah. And one thing to also mention, in the event that it did come back to the launch pad, I'm not going to go too deeply into this because Ryan Hansen Space is working on a deep dive into this, but we are expecting that the booster, if it were to miss, to not commit to the landing, would probably end up landing somewhere in the wetlands, and that's just the area that it's aimed towards. And so I think if the hot stage ring were to return to land, it would probably end up somewhere in this area if it actually ended up reaching land, which I would like to believe they've got this figured out to the point where they're not really worried about it falling to land. So, yeah, I'm sure we have some questions on this topic. We didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on it, but Astro Joe, do we have any questions in the chat about this, or is it mostly just kind of comments?
No questions to address really, but I want to thank Flipper79, Flip Diaz for gifting a membership, as well as Wilbo Baggins and Callistia Lee gifting 5. And thanks Wilbo Baggins for a super chat. Favorite weekly event up for longer if you can. He says.
Yeah, I would really like to see some footage of a camera in the proper location when that hot stage ring contacts the water.
I wonder how fast it's going.
Yeah, I mean it's whatever speed the booster's doing before igniting for the landing burn, probably something close to that.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect it would slow down much unless it because depending on the orientation, it will depend on how fast it's going, because you can get a
Yeah, I would
pretty
just love
decent
to
amount
hear
of
the
drag
sound
on
when it impacts.
that. Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
All right. Well, I guess since we don't have any questions on that topic, that helps us out because we didn't want to spend a ton of time on it. But we will go ahead and move over to the Massey's test site, where there isn't a ton to talk about this week, but we're still going to touch on it anyways. So I think this is a carryover from last week, but Ship 31 is sitting on top of the static fire test stand, waiting to perform its first static fire test.
Yeah, still got to do
Yeah,
its first.
right.
It's had
So-
a couple issues. It may have performed a spin prime. It may have been aborted. The weather was bad enough that it was kind of hard to tell, and then it had an abort yesterday because of some reason.
Yeah. So I mean, it makes sense that it would do at least one spin prime. I do wonder. I mean, it's kind of difficult to say whether or not things are aborts, especially from the distance that we're watching this from. But it does make sense to go straight from a spin prime to an actual static fire test. But yeah, as expanding on what you were saying, Ship 31 did have some issues during its initial cryo testing, where the raceway suffered some damage. It was like an electrical fire essentially that damaged the raceway on the front of the ship. So they took it back to the build site. A lot of people thought that Ship 31 would end up being scrapped, but that's not really how SpaceX does things. So they were able to get that prepared, and now it is here waiting for that first static fire test. And I think hopefully we'll probably see that sometime this week. If not, is there a closure? Or actually, we don't need closures for these anymore, so it would be tough to predict when it's going to happen.
Yeah, there's
So
closures for it to roll back, the 17th and the 18th. So
sometime before then.
yeah,
Awesome. I do want to talk more about this flame trench here in a little bit, but we'll come back to that. Other than that, we do have the 3 additional tanks that were added down here. It looks like they've gotten some cryo pipes laying out here, so they're preparing to integrate those into the rest of the tank farm, essentially. It's difficult to see what's happening on the other side over here because that's where all of the connections to the main lines are. So it's difficult to say how far they are in that process. but we do see some pipe work down here, which says that they haven't finished it yet. And beyond that, they have been doing some work on this. I think I have a better view of it that kind of shows these guys down here welding on this. Huh. This is probably a good one. Yeah, so the next layer of the actual test structure, they are finishing up on that. It looks like they're completing all the welds that join the cross members to the vertical columns. And you can actually see them down here welding, pretty bright light from that. And in the meantime, we do have testing from 14.1.
Test Tank 16. I mean, it doesn't have an
Every
actual
time.
name because we've never seen.
Yeah.
14.1 is still in the rocket garden.
Yeah. Test Tank 16 has all of the can crusher related components as far as the pistons that are joined together on the top and bottom. So all of that is set up. They have done a cryo test this last week, but with the distance it is from the all the cameras are from this location, it's really difficult to actually see that test in process, because usually with some of the other can crusher tests you could actually see these flexing. So I haven't seen any footage that showed that happening on the last test. So there's a good chance they probably still have more to go. But again, this is just proofing a vehicle, future version of the Starship. Basically, version 2 aft section of the ship is what they're doing a structural verification test on, essentially. So, good to see them being way ahead with that process instead of, well, I guess they do technically already have a version 2 ship stacked already, but they're not. They're at least getting this done before it flies. So that's good news. Do you have anything else you wanted to touch on at Massey's?
I mean, there's not really a lot going on with it. I'm just kind of curious with the Test Tank 16 if it'll cause them to have to make any changes to 33, or if because SpaceX loves to do their tradition of building a vehicle while also testing the components for it. They love that tradition so much, or even testing the components while flying it. So we'll see if there's any changes, but I think it's just verification for the new aft.
Yeah, with the updated app section, it's kind of basically building on a lot of the things that they've already learned. I think it also, to some degree, has to do with verifying the thrust puck in particular to withstand the increased thrust from the upgraded Raptors, which I believe we probably should expect version 3 Raptors to end up on ship 33 potentially. So, I think for the most part, we probably really shouldn't expect anything to fail, but obviously the only way we would know if it did is if we start seeing changes from what we've already seen on ship 33. So very, very difficult to actually determine the outcome of this kind of test. So moving on, unless we have questions on Massey's, I'm going to go ahead and take us over to the Sanchez site.
On to Sanchez we go.
Cool. So lots of fun stuff to talk about at Sanchez this week. I was really excited to get back to this topic because, I don't know. I read a lot of the comments and a lot of people are still not convinced on this topic, which we will be discussing here in a minute. So, I continue to look for evidence that fits what we're expecting, or at least what I'm expecting. I think a lot more people are on board with this now. But so this week we've had a delivery to the Sanchez site, which I believe the first 2 of these were actually here last week. They were probably pointed out in that episode. But we do have 4 of these pedestals, which are now hanging out down here on top of the base, the pads that they've set up for whatever structure is going to be constructed here. So I think at this point, every day or every week we see something else that kind of lends towards the theory that they are preparing to construct a somewhat mobile launch mount here. the most of the tower itself is actually completed already. So the only things that are really missing are the QD arm and the launch mount as far as major structures.
Say the deflector is
Um,
a pretty significant part that they don't have yet either.
you mean like for the flame trench?
Yeah. Like, I don't think so. They could. I mean, there's no evidence to support it whatsoever. This is just me spitballing, but they could try something the way NASA does for 39A, at least what they did for Shuttle and for Saturn V, which is use multiple flame deflectors and swap them out and refurb them as they go. Um, I don't know if SpaceX would do something like that. It's something I could see them doing, but they could also make like an integrated setup like New Glenn has that we saw during Tim's tour, which would be a cool thing too. But I think it's going to be some kind of a structure like Massey's at least, but it's going to be scaled up, obviously.
Yeah, yeah, and again, a lot of comments related to this refer to the complexity of doing something like this, and it's honestly far less complex than the original launch mount. Like it's really hard to beat that launch mount when it comes to complexity, other than apparently the mobile launch structure for SLS, I guess. Given the price tag of that, it must be extremely complex. But yeah, so what we're seeing down here is a very wide base. You can see the transport stands for the boosters over here. So you could tell that whatever is going here is at least as wide as those. I think it's slightly wider, at least in this direction. I think these would fit within that footprint. And so we have 4 pedestals down here, and they each have an edge or on 2 sides. So basically, kind of like a bowl. And I think this is basically identical to what we see at the Massey's test site, which is these are from a different week. These are the pedestals for the static fire test stand. So these are slightly smaller, and uh, in my opinion, these may actually be a little bit more heavy duty because they're more solid. They don't have as much material cut out of them, and that makes sense because these ones are actually expected to handle the full weight of the ship plus, the test stand full weight of the ship plus all of the propellant on board. So they're a little bit more heavy duty. What we're seeing here at the Sanchez site, these only need to support the weight of the structure itself, and I imagine that the equivalent pedestals at the launch site would probably be a little bit more heavy duty than this. Obviously, you wouldn't want gaps underneath it for flames to travel through and damage underneath there. So, yeah, I think these are purely for construction purposes only, and theoretically, they could also be for maintenance purposes. So, once this thing goes to the launch site and inevitably needs to come back for refurbishment, they would just bring it back here and sit it on top of these and do all of the work on a nice level surface. So a lot of effort went into constructing the bases for these, and now we finally see the pedestals. And I don't know. I do like to consider both sides of every situation, just to not be really surprised by whatever occurs. But I haven't seen any evidence whatsoever that would lead us to think that there's anything other than a mobile launch mount. So I know a lot of y'all think that I'm kind of stuck on this fantasy, and fine, feel that way if you would. But they're just simply, I'm an evidence-based person. There's simply no evidence for any other outcome other than what we're talking about here right now. Once we do see any evidence to the contrary, I will be happy to. I'll probably be the first one to point it out because I know somebody else will if I don't. But yeah, this is what we're seeing right now. So I think within the next week, we'll probably see these bolted down onto the actual foundations, and then they will use this as a jig, I guess, part of it at least, to actually construct that launch mount structure. So what I'm expecting, if it's similar to the static fire test stand, and I'm going to go back to that really quick. This is a little bit different because you have basically each of the legs attached to the actual ring. And so the question is if the legs will be freestanding without the ring or not. And I think there is a small chance that they will be. But yeah, I'm imagining that we'll probably see the legs installed first whenever those arrive, and um, somewhere around this area, we'll see them constructing the actual ring eventually. And yeah, I mean, this is what I'm seeing basically is a larger version of what we're already seeing at Massey's. Do you have any thoughts on this as well, Ryan?
I mean, I will stay open to one or the other until we actually, well, until we see the whole, whether or not it actually is in a mobile. It would be kind of interesting, honestly. I can understand the appeal for a mobile one, and I can understand the appeal not for one. But it's kind of there's sides to both of them. But I personally just can't wait for them to start building this thing and to see what changes they have come up with, because clearly the pad that they have works for now, but there are so many problems with it. Um like I think we're gonna go down to like maybe 6 clamps total. Like I don't think they're gonna do the 20 anymore. Like they're not gonna do the booster Q the Raptor QDs anymore. I think it's all gonna get routed through the booster QD. Like there's gonna be so many cool changes. I can't wait to see this thing come up, get built.
Yeah, it's always funny to me how people are unwilling to see these things sometimes. I guess you have to like actually see it constructed before you start to believe it. Yeah, and trust me, I'm the first person who would be upset about not having a similar launch mount to the other one. Don't call myself Stage Zero Zach for no reason. I'm definitely in love with that structure. I think it's absolutely incredible. And I don't know. I think there was a lot of features of that launch mount that uh, a lot of us in our group were probably the first to truly get an understanding of. And with that said, I also, in the process of getting an understanding of how that thing works, always thought in my head, this is massively overcomplicated. It's amazing, but it's also extremely overcomplicated. Um, and so it makes sense to me that you would want to do something like this, because it's just physically impossible that you're not going to have some sort of refurbishment that needs to be done on this structure. So if you can accomplish that refurbishment, and I say air quotes around refurbishment because you would just swap it out with another one. If you can do that in 2 days versus wait 30 to 45 days for the actual refurbishments to be completed, then that is a major win as far as keeping your launch cadence where you want it to be. So yeah, I think over the next few weeks we'll see more parts for this come in, one way or another, whether it's mobile or not. I do believe this is where they will be constructing that launch mount. And I guess playing devil's advocate here, if it's not a mobile launch mount, it's very confusing as far as how you would use just these 4 pedestals to construct a similar launch deck to what we've already seen. The previous one was supported in more than just 4 points like this, because you don't want it warping in the center as it's like bowing under its own weight. So there would need to be some additional supports on the sides here, which theoretically could show up. They're just not here yet. There's also no support on the ground. This is definitely designed to be fully supported on these 4 points. And so I can't imagine how you would build a support structure in order to construct a similar launch mount like the first one on this pad. I just don't see how you would do that. Yeah, and this is one of those things, and I've said it before. I know Alex said it on past episodes. A lot of these things that happen at Starbase, you're kind of, once it becomes obvious, you're like, whoa, how did we not notice that? You really just have to like pay attention to the signs, because none of these things can happen secretively. If you go back after any of these structures are completed and look at previous images, you'll see all the signs that you didn't realize for what they are. And I feel like once you do that enough, it becomes easier to predict what's happening on future mystery projects. So yeah, I try not to ignore evidence, but this is where all the evidence is pointing right now. So I guess we will see here in the coming weeks whether or not that ends up being the case. So continuing on that, uh, one of the big things I think that also kind of leads to this a little bit, as far as like indications, and I have said this on X before, but I guess I'll repeat it here since people keep bringing it up. I do think that this huge entrance that they've got down here is another indication because this is, in my opinion, wider than what's needed for just a booster on SPMTs. I do think that they're expecting a very wide structure to come through here. And so I think what we'll probably end up seeing is a short path going towards this pad A, and then I do think this will continue as a ramp up to where it needs to go for this for the flame trench. And I don't. Another big thing is I don't know. I wouldn't know why you would expect it to be anything other than mobile because that's kind of how the initial flame trench is constructed. And usually you give signs with that initial smaller project on how you expect the larger one to be as well too. And I've explained that before, like how the deluge system for Pad A was kind of an inspiration for the deluge system at the static fire test stand, and I think that entire static fire test stand um, is basically version one of what we're going to see out here. So, um, yeah, a little bit more complex, but I do think there's going to be a lot in common between those two structures. So moving on, there was a lot of components that were down here for the Star Factory, which ended up getting moved into the factory last week, so I won't really touch on those. Down here, I don't think that there's as much to really talk about in this area.
Just scattered stuff, and then a carriage. You're missing some tanks because they're now installed on the other carriage.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I'm sure that was mentioned last week as well too, but the accumulators and I forget what they're called. Basically, the large bank of cylinders that was sitting on here has been removed. And was it already? Did it already get switched out on the other set of?
Yeah,
the
they
carriage?
should have already switched them out. They're basically focused on the main reinforcements on that now. Though they've swapped all those out by now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and the other interesting thing we have down here, which is something that I've been waiting for, we have some new tanks that are down here in this area, and I think I have a better view that kind of looks at them from above. Maybe this one? No. Cool. So first of all, we have one right here, and I think another one arrived a few days ago, and then we also have some pedestals for at least one more, if not two. And so these kind of look similar to it's like a cross between the kettle boilers and the uh, recondenser system for the orbital tank farm. So I'll kind of show you guys what I'm talking about here. It's very similar to this one right here. And so this is one of those things which I mentioned several months back that I think we should expect to see. So given that these two, the both launch pads are going to share the same tank farm, I do think it makes sense that the pad B is going to need its own detanking system for methane, which this is a part of that system. So they already moved part of that over to the front of the tank farm down here. But this right here, in my opinion, is still good to be. It's necessary for it to be as close to the launch pad as possible. So you wouldn't want to like basically run all the way from pad B over here and then back to those tanks. It just actually is a little bit more inefficient, and it increases the amount of boiled off methane you're going to have in that system. So it just requires more work the further you go. So I think, sorry, I'm going to go back to that. I think this is probably related to that same system for Pad B. So that was definitely expecting something like this to show up, and I think this may be what it is. We do see some inlets on the bottom right here, so I think this potentially could be nitrogen in and out, and then you'll have, if I had to guess, methane in from the top and out from the side right here. So several different ports on each going up top, but I think all of these are potentially for natural gas, essentially. So it looks like we're going to see at least 3 of those, and they're definitely staging things ahead of time before they're actually ready to install it at the launch site, which is always good to see. It lets us kind of predict what's going to happen at the launch site. And just good overall to see them making progress on the propellant loading aspect of the launch site, which we also have had other components for that sitting down here for quite a while. So we do have these vaporizers down here, and another, I don't know if this is a storage tank or another condenser. But
I think that
all of these components, what was
I
that?
think that came from the orbital pad, and then I mean that's the scrapyard. So I don't know if they're going to use it anymore, or either they're storing it or scrapping it. I don't know what I don't even know what the
Yeah,
whole thing, that whole area is used for. It'd be nice if they would just
separate them.
I can't. I keep saying it. They need to have like a plasma cutter party with a couple of dumpsters. Well, more than a couple of dumpsters, but they need to just kind of
Yeah,
get rid of a bunch of this
get
stuff.
rid of all the old stuff. Yep. I don't think that'll happen until they. Well, you would think right now they have some extra free time in
Right.
between launches, so maybe we'll start to see that soon.
Scrap
These vaporizers
26.
for sure are new, so I
Well,
do
this,
think with them being kind of staged in the same area that they'll probably get reinstalled. Let's see. Do we have anything else down here that's worth mentioning? Oh, well, we are still waiting on the next test of um, 14.1, which we're expecting to be some sort of drop test. Haven't seen all the components for that, or we may have. We're not sure what will be involved in it, but do think that there's a good chance that this structure right here possibly is involved in that test. Um, but what we are expecting is multiple different drop tests. So probably a drop test. I'm sorry, let me find it. This is kind of a dark image, but still good enough to show what we're going to show. We'll probably see them drop it without any water inside of it. We do expect that this is probably done with water instead of like liquid nitrogen. So probably do a short test on, probably when I say short, like less than a meter, dropping it onto the landing rail. And then we'll also see them probably repeat it with water inside of it and at potentially a few different drop heights. Um, so I'm actually surprised that we haven't seen them perform this test yet, but they are doing a lot of reinforcement on the tower and the chopsticks, so it does make sense to some degree that they're holding off on this.
yeah, I think they're going to wait till all the reinforcements that they're doing are done, and then once all the current work is done, they'll go out, test it, and whatever they come up with from there, they'll do whatever other modifications, unless they don't need to do anymore, and then they move forward. So
Right. Yeah, I think there's a strong chance that the modifications they're making aren't fully necessary. They just want it to be stronger than needed. Um, I mean, there's also a good chance that it's all based on like testing data, what they've gotten shown them that, oh, okay, yeah, we need to add some additional reinforcement wherever possible. And that thought kind of makes me question whether or not they truly are ready to fly right now. Um, because in my mind, most of that reinforcement seems like it's necessary given the amount of effort that they're putting into it, and uh, I guess the locations where it's being done. It's pretty insane how much reinforcement they've added over the last few weeks. Um, I don't think we have anything else at the Sanchez site. So, Astro Joe, do we have any questions for now?
Yeah, I got a couple here, but I want to thank Jax for gifting a membership as well as Martin for gifting 5. Thanks for that support, keeping RGV flying. Question from Missing Tools. What is Shadow, the all black crane, up to with stands and tank there at Sanchez?
Yeah, so I think that's kind of, we did touch on that, offloading these new tanks right here. So there was one that showed up shortly after the flyover, and we believe there's another one that will probably be arriving soon too. I wonder if it's actually at the port or in another storage location, but I didn't notice it when I was looking through those images. But yeah, so that's what he's doing down there.
Gotcha, right. That came in right at the end of Massey, so sorry about that. Spacey Plum asking, so is the idea that they eventually have multiple launch mounts so they can swap out and refurbish to increase the launch cadence?
Yeah. In my opinion, I don't see how you're gonna get the cadence that you want without doing that. In my opinion, like there's no option other than to have a mobile launch structure. Like that's the only way they're gonna achieve the goal that they want to do.
JS Web Production asking, what is the advantage of having a mobile launch mount?
Well, the big advantage is just being able to reduce the time in between maintenance. Ideally, it's already going to be simplified further from what it was from the original design, so that there'll be less components that can break. But the actual superstructure itself is always going to receive some sort of thermal damage, a lot of erosion, especially during the pad avoidance maneuver, and most likely during landing as well too. So I think if it can withstand 3 launches, if they're comfortable with letting it go 3 launches before needing to be refurbished, then you have 3 launch cycles to get it refurbished before it needs to be swapped with the other one. So depending on the cadence, that may not even be enough, and you may need 3 of them so that you can basically go 6 launch cycles without having to switch the same one back in. But that would be the main benefit. It has nothing to do with transporting the booster back to the launch site quickly. It has nothing to do with launching from the same structure that you're transporting on. It's all about refurbishment.
I'll take that. Statement from Leo, I think they'll use the pedestals to build the top surface of the new launch mount. I think it'll work similarly to the current deluge plate. That's why the new deluge pond is where it is.
Wait, sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. So it's a statement from Leo. I think they'll use the pedestals to build the top surface of the new launch mount. I think it'll work similarly to the current deluge plate. That's why the new deluge pond is where it is.
Oh, you think they're gonna have a shower head on the OLM deck? Well, they don't need a shower on the deck.
Arguably they do.
I mean, they could do the same thing they do with Saturn or any other rocket in the in human existence, which is spray a bunch of water on the deck. It'll help more than you think. It may not need a sprayer like a shower head, but as long as you can get a decent amount of water on the deck, that will more than help against any erosion or anything along those lines. I don't think they'll do a shower head. I think that'll just be your flame deflector itself. But then again, I could be wrong.
Yeah. I mean, the actual deluge plate could not be assembled in 4 corners like this. If it was a similar plate like the one that we saw, you can't build a structure that heavy and only support it on 4 corners, because that doesn't really give you the ability to install all of those pieces, first of all, and then relying on it to support the weight on those 4 corners is not a good idea at all, especially with the kind of tolerances that you need when you're actually installing it. So yeah, any risk of bending that structure at all is something that has to be avoided. And so, yeah, I don't think this could be possibly used for constructing the deluge plate. Same argument I would say for the actual launch mount itself. The actual ring structure, I don't think 4 corners is enough support to build that. And that's not just my opinion. I think it's kind of been shown in other structures that they've built. It doesn't make sense. You have to support it under every section of the actual object. So like take this for example. it's supported under each of these cutouts right here. So yeah, we've just seen so many different examples of it in the past that we kind of can tell without even knowing what's coming next that you're not going to construct a simple ring on top of this.
All right, Samuel Miller asking, do you think they'll construct OLM2 for version 2 boosters or keep the design for version 1 boosters?
It'll be for Block 2.
Yeah.
The current version of booster has a lot of problems with it that need to get solved. The biggest one is the fact that they still are routing engine chill through separate lines that hook into a manifold. That's a problem that needs to get solved, and my guess is it'll be an internal piping to the booster, which will complicate it even more, but they'll route it through the main QD. I think that's going to be the solve for that down the line. But this mount will not be compatible with older boosters. They will make Block 1 boosters to fly out of Pad A, and once they're out of those boosters, that pad is scrap. So that's...
Yeah. As far as we can tell right now, Booster 15 may be the last launch for Pad A.
But we'll
And that's assuming that 16 doesn't come out with looking the same as 15.
Yeah.
Right. Sounds good. Crane Man asking, won't Highway 4 be too small for a mobile launch mount since it's just wide enough for a booster transport and ship's static fire stand?
No, I don't think so. So it does have the shoulder space over here, so it can hang on over on the shoulder. Let me see. I'll try and grab a image that shows more of the highway. Pretty much everything over here, if it's overhanging, it doesn't really matter. As long as the wheels are able to fit on the actual road, there isn't much to worry about as far as colliding with a wall or something like that until you get over to this area. And there is, let me grab from this one. It is very wide. You have a pretty good offset from the road to the actual wall. So, and same thing down here. There's nothing on this side of the road, which you really need to worry about. So even though this driveway is significantly wider than the actual highway itself, I don't really think that's a problem.
Agreed. Sounds good to me. Toby Woby asking, is there activity on those 2 white tanks at Sanchez? Are they refitting it?
I haven't seen. I'd have to go back and compare previous images to see whether or not these fittings on the top are different, but I believe they're the same. I haven't noticed any cranes down in this area.
I think those are just being saved for Pad B whenever they need them. They're bringing in stuff and storing it away till when the place to place it is built.
Yeah, I think these are related to these tanks down here. I believe they'll probably be used together. So these would be temporary storage tanks for methane, and then they'll process them through the heat exchangers as fast as possible. But in the meantime, you continue detanking the vehicle, and you have to have a temporary storage location because you're going to be detanking faster than this thing is able to keep up with. So, well, theoretically, knowing how fast they need to detank, they may have. I think that's potentially why there are 3 of these instead of 1. It allows them to detank faster than they were previously. But we'll have to see once they actually install these.
Sure. There's discussion in chat about this drop test from a crane. Wouldn't that do harm to the crane boom by just releasing a heavy load? Wouldn't that kind of cause problems?
So yeah, I was one of the people who said that in the past that I didn't expect a drop test for that reason. But after talking to a few other people who are a little bit more knowledgeable about cranes than I am, it is something that could theoretically be possible. I think that there probably are some extra safety precautions that need to be taken in order to do that, and like there are certain cranes that you'd only be able to do it with. Like Grover, for example, would probably not be one that you're going to do that with because it requires a suspended counterweight tray. Whereas Marvin, the LR 11,000, does not require that. And so it can basically stay mobile with the amount of counterweights that are needed to lift a booster. And we actually have seen it do that, walk with a booster attached to it. So I do think it is possible. And I also, and sorry, I'm searching down here for a picture of that test tank so we can kind of look at it from the side so I can make this other point. Yeah, I definitely hear that concern and I agree with it. But, you know, when you want to do something, you'll figure out a way to make it happen. Where is that picture?
One way or another.
Yeah, I don't see a good side profile view of it. Maybe this will do. Yeah, so and Jenna Hammer had a really good up close shot of this a few weeks ago, but basically the load points on this were retrofitted to have I don't know what you want to call this. There's basically a pin that goes across up here, which in my opinion looks like something that'll be used for a quick release. So it's not necessary to lift this from that point because it already has a um, a lifting jig specifically for the top of this. So whatever they're planning to do here involves lifting it from this point, which is not necessary. We already know it's not necessary to lift from there. So I think in order to have a quick release, that's why they made this addition onto here specifically so they can lift and drop from that same point. And as far as evidence to support that that's what's going to happen, this is pretty much all. But again, there's always indicators of what they're planning to do. You just have to notice them and kind of accept them for what they are. Occasionally, you end up being wrong, but going off of evidence, that's what we're seeing. And so, you know, I don't disagree with direct evidence that I'm seeing. Cool. Any other questions?
Yeah, one just came in from Black Eagle. Isn't 14.1 a little too short for a proper drop testing?
Just put water in it. Make it heavy enough. That's all you really need to test. You just want to test the load on the sticks and the landing rails. Is basically what you're testing. Yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of short, but if you fill that up with water, it's going to be pretty heavy. So I don't think the length is a big concern.
For sure. Crane Man is stating in chat, cable winch with quick release for drop test. I guess that would make it the safe way.
Yeah.
Samuel Miller just came in with a question. Do you think they'll keep it attached to the crane in some way, but just let it fall or completely let it go?
I think you got to completely release it.
All right. And a general question from Lincoln. What is the weekly RGV stream schedule? I'm new, he states.
Well, our normal schedule is on Saturdays, but that is usually dependent on whether or not the flyovers happen by Friday. So if the flyovers happen Saturday morning, then we don't try and force the show to be on the same day because it doesn't give us time to review the images. So yeah, in the event that flyovers are pushed to Saturday, we end up doing the shows on Sunday. So it's kind of a toss up. And unfortunately, we're really limited based on weather. I think a lot of times we would almost consider canceling the show because a lot of people don't like being here on Sundays. But yeah, we still try and do them every week, even if the flyover is delayed.
Well, thank you very much. My queue is clear.
Cool. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move over to the production site. Once again, not as much to talk about here. They're doing a ton of groundwork outside of here still for the front of the Star Factory. It looks like they've finally completed most of the concrete. They still have these small areas down here which aren't finished yet. But for the most part, this whole courtyard area looks to be completed. Um, I do want to start hating on the high bay again. I know y'all have probably heard me say this in the past, and I will label this as the highest level of speculation, whereas the other things that we've kind of talked about during the show, I kind of give a low level of speculation because there's a lot of evidence that suggests that they're true. But for the actual high bay, and I'm going to go find a different image for this because I want to show it from a better vantage point. This might work, but I may have to go with another one. I really want to show it from the front side, but I don't think we have
There
a
should
good
be
angle
one.
of that.
There's definitely one
not-
from the front side.
I only see this one, which is super far away. I'll continue looking here for a few seconds. If I don't see one, I think I'll just use one from the backside, which will be fine. So this is a problem that I think a lot of us have mentioned multiple times ever since the version 2 of the vehicles were announced. We just simply don't think these bays are tall enough. For 100%, the high bay will be completely useless once version 3 of Starship comes around, because you won't be able to fit a full ship in there, and you definitely will not be able to fit a booster in there. I don't know if we can fit a booster in there currently. I know they've done it, but I don't know if you can do it on top of the transport stand with the hot stage ring attached.
I doubt it.
So, yeah, I don't think you can. I mean, the roof, the opening is about the same as the Mega Bay. I think you could get it in there, but you couldn't do anything with it in there. The crane wouldn't be able to interact with it because it's way too low.
The crane is literally right at the opening. In terms of the mega bays, the crane is a little bit higher than the actual opening, so you can actually hook up to it. But yeah, I don't think they'd be able to do anything with it. It's becoming more and more useless each passing week.
Yeah. So I've been wishing for the downfall of high bay for a while, so I just want to restate this in case it ends up happening sooner than we're expecting. I mean, one thing to note here is that almost everything in this area, specifically Stargate, completely useless once they open up the office building over here. So there's no way to know for sure that they're planning to move that over there. But in my opinion, it just simply doesn't make sense to construct this without that in consideration. So, I mean, this is probably 4 to 6 times larger than what they have over at the Stargate building, if not more. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this building go away. I wouldn't be surprised to see high bay go away. And with that said, just looking at the area that we have for it, if you theoretically back all the way up into the parking lot, you have a pretty large structure that you can throw in this area. So I just want to keep that thought in the back of y'all's head to potentially be on the lookout for some evidence that they're planning to get rid of this building. And the moment that they start doing that, I think we can already assume what they're going to put in place of it. So I think once we see this go away, this whole parking lot will be blocked off, and they'll end up probably trying to deconstruct this one level at a time, because I don't think dropping it would be very smart.
No,
it's not impossible,
not with
just not smart.
not with the factory there now, not with all the buildings around it. Trying to drop that thing, yeah, I wouldn't.
Yeah,
do it.
It'd be fun, but
It would be fun.
probably not ideal. Yeah, and again, I mean, if you look at the size of that space here, you could basically go twice as uh, twice as wide as the existing mega bays, and even just a little bit deeper as well too, and certainly a little bit taller, because again, we're not certain that these are tall enough for the version 3 booster, which only is I think it's only like 1 or 2 rings taller.
I
But
have to
that
look
still
again.
starts to max it out, especially with the hot stage ring.
I think the Block 3 booster gets to like 80 meters.
Yeah.
I think. I think block 3 gets to like 70 and 80. 70 for the ship, 80 for the boosters, so you get about 140 meters. Assuming they stretch it that much. I mean, there's still no guarantee they will actually stretch it that much, but that's the ultimate plan, I think. But
Yeah, I think a sign of this happening is the footprint of the parking garage. Um, I think from the moment they constructed it, I was confused why it's only on the back half of the parking lot over here because there's not really any reason to not bring it further into the parking lot. So again, just looking for signs of things being what we think they are. In my opinion, the positioning of the parking garage is kind of a giveaway of what's potentially going to happen here. Cool. So moving on, we do have ship 33, which I think this morning received one of its aft flaps. I don't know if it already had the first set or the first pair.
as far as I know,
But
it
we
did
do
not.
know. Okay, yeah. So the first of its aft flaps was installed today. Probably expect that second one to go on soon. As far as boosters go, I don't think we've seen any updates from any of the boosters in the last month, really.
I
I
mean,
think Booster 15's aft
15,
section was like the last thing we've
yeah,
seen come in and out of
still in
here.
2 halves because they haven't rolled in a stand to swap the bridge cranes for it. And 12 is still in there, 13 still in there, and 14 still in there. So, yeah, nothing's
Yeah,
come out of that high bay in 2 months, the mega bay in 2 months. So, yeah.
yeah. What I would like to see is, man, this would be a lot of work to pull it off too, but a structure entirely for boosters, and then most of the things moved out of booster bay, um, so that you have 2 ship bays, one for stacking, one for final outfitting, and then a bay just for boosters because you need space for retrofitting boosters when they come back or refurbishment. So I don't think their existing space is going to be enough to accommodate both vehicles under construction and retrofitting vehicles post flight. So that's something that I would like to see is a much larger bay, where you can have at least, I don't know, up to 6 storage locations
I
for boosters.
I can't even imagine what the bays are going to be like at Roberts Road. Like, if they truly want to launch as much as they say they want, you're probably talking a factory 2 to 3 times the size of what you have here. I do say that. Probably you're talking 2 million square feet of factory space to be able to pump the ships out that you need. And then you're like, the Mega Bay isn't tall enough for later boosters. It's not. Not with the current transport stands or everything else. So, well, you need a taller bay and you need more. So you're talking a taller Mega Bay like structure, several of them, because you need to be able to store boosters that you want. You want to store them inside, and you want to be able to refurbish them all. Like the infrastructure required to maintain what they want to do with Starship is mind-boggling. Like, you're
Yeah,
talking a facility the size of possibly Everett, the Boeing factory in Everett, Washington, like, which is gigantic. Like, I forget how
yeah.
many million square feet of floor space they have, but you're talking something stupendously big.
Yeah, and I guess 2 more points on that. There's no chance there's nothing you could say that would convince me that these buildings right here are enough to support the capacity that this factory is now capable of outputting. There's no way that's possible. Um, and especially with all the additions that they keep making onto it, like this is a massive structure. Um, just boosters alone, I wouldn't be surprised if you could have um, potentially 6 boosters under construction at one time, and I don't know, equal amount of ships, if not more, because you do need more ships than boosters. So just the rate that they're able to produce out of this factory alone makes it so that we should definitely expect to see some additional um, stacking infrastructure. So And if you are going to build a larger bay at Roberts Road, in my opinion, it makes sense to do it here first. That way you can figure out exactly what you want it to look like on the inside. You can build it out, see what you do and don't like about it, and then make any changes that are necessary before you build your main production facility, which will be in Florida. So I do think that we should, I'm going to say before January or February, we should start seeing something happen with this building. I'm
It's
going to take a
like
voice clip of this.
after 31 gets its heat shield redone, they should not need the tiling station inside the high bay anymore. They should only need little bits and pieces inside Mega Bay 2 to finish off heat shields, things like that, because most of the tiling will all be while it's either on the turntable or while it's either in Star Factory. The one thing they're going to want to do down the line is they're going to want to have a station where they can put a ship and redo chunks of its heat shield as they come back, because eventually you're going to need to redo that, but that is down the line. They don't need that right now. But the other part to Florida is the high bays and factories would probably be integrated. Like a single ring section should never see the light of day until it's stacked and integrated with the vehicle, and the vehicle rolls out as a
Whoa,
whole.
don't let the ring watchers hear you say that.
Well, I mean, it's not like we can see anything in Florida. I mean,
True.
but
Yeah, that's very true.
For cleanliness sake down the line, as we have talked before, SpaceX has played it fast and loose with FOD. Very fast and loose. They cannot afford to do that later in the program. They can't. So
Yeah, I mean, what you could argue that the path to enter the bay from the factory is actually very short now. As long as they're ready to receive whatever items moving through there, it should only be outside for about a half an hour. But in the event that you have like a rainstorm, which happens pretty frequently at Starbase, then you don't want to have to wait on that just to move it across. So I wouldn't be surprised necessarily to see a factory that is turned the opposite, or sorry, the bay is turned the opposite direction at Roberts Road. So you have like a small door in the back for your ring sections to enter out of, and then only full assemblies come out of the front. Yeah, something like that would make a lot of sense. You just literally have 3 or 4 bays backed up against this wall of the factory. That's what I would do. Speaking of the factory, we'll move on a little bit from that topic. The extension work is making some progress, as always. And I guess we'll start over here on the roof, because this has been confusing to me. Initially, I was expecting we might see an accessible rooftop area, but now I'm not so sure. What do you think? So they are doing some final finishing on the top of this, and I think this is like some kind of rubber padding that goes on the top.
I don't think it's gonna be. I mean, maybe accessible to machinery, but I don't think they're gonna have any like air conditioning units up there. I think that's all separate. So I don't know. I don't think they need to get on the roof for any reason.
I think it'd be cool to be able to get up on the roof for static fire tests.
I could see that. Yeah.
Have little parties for static fire tests. Because often we'll see them out here. They have to walk through all the vegetation in order to get a good vantage point. So I think it'd be cool to just be able to walk to the top of this building instead. But moving on, there is, I think this part has been going kind of slow in my opinion. So there's continuing the work on the extension right here. And I've heard some people give this a name, like a breezeway, I guess. I'm not sure if it makes sense to call it that, though, considering that it's going to expand over into this area.
Yeah, because you can see they've dug out for the footings now. So they're
Finally, wow, that took just so many months of waiting for this, and now we finally have some footings here.
Oh man, it's nice, and they're already laying down rebar and all that fun jazz. So we're finally gonna get it. It's gonna look weird. It's gonna be this like big box structure of the Star Factory with like a thumb sticking out in terms of the office building. It's gonna look weird. It's gonna
like it.
look weird, but
I
cool. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, I didn't like it. I wasn't a fan at first, but it's cool watching the mezzanine go in and then seeing how they'll connect everything. I kind of like the process of that. Yeah, they definitely got some more work to do down here as far as footings go. Guessing they'll have to demolish this little structure right here, whatever that is, in order to put. I think they're gonna need at least 2 more footings in order to reach the rest of the building. And then I think we'll also see them continue down in this direction. They do have some around the edges already, which I don't know if I have a view that will. Oh, perfect. Um, with the clouds, it's a little difficult to see, but there are some footings around the back edges over here. So we'll probably see these extend out further as well too.
Because when they first started building the office building here, and then we're building the Starfighter, I'm like, well, okay, whenever they get that piece of land, they'll just kind of square out the factory, and then they'll have like a little open area behind the office. I was like, that'd be kind of cool. No, it's just all
Nope.
going to be building. Nope.
I mean, and if you look at it though, it's really cool the way it works out um, because this matches the height of the rest of the factory. I guess it is a little taller right here than it should be, but everything down here again matches the rest of the roof. So it's really cool the way that lines up. Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of it. I wasn't before. I think an interesting part right here is this little area, which we've seen. It's a little difficult to see with all the mechanical stuff down here. You got um, a ton of duct work for all of the mechanical systems, but there is a bit of a what do you call it? Basically, a short concrete wall that goes around the edge right here.
Garden or something?
No, I don't think so.
No.
'Cause I believe that this will probably be a glass ceiling potentially. There, it doesn't look like there'll be glass here, but I do believe there'll probably be a glass roof unless they're just leaving this open so they can lift super heavy equipment up here, which I don't know. I mean, other than computers, what else you would expect to have that needs to be lifted in through the roof? But I don't know. This looks like an open like command area with computers lining the backside of it.
Because I
can
fully
imagine-
expect the new launch control to be in one of these buildings, somewhere in here.
This looks like it to me. I think this looks like launch control.
You would
'Cause you
think
know
you would
how
want
like the
glass
NASA launch
facing.
control,
No, because
not necessarily.
Well, I mean, I envision something like the firing room, like firing room 4, which faces directly at 39A. But granted, that's 3 miles away. About 3 miles away from the pad itself. That's what I was wondering if they would go for. I mean, maybe it is. Maybe there's something in the office building in there, but I don't think we really saw anything that it would indicate they're making a launch room for that. But who knows?
I'm gonna look at a further image to see if we can. What happened to my long distance ones? It's around here somewhere. I think this is it actually. See if what the view is from. Okay, of course this doesn't show it. I was looking to see what the view would be from the corner of that office to the launch site, like what they can actually see. And I don't think it's very much, but once it gets airborne, I think they would be able to see out of a window if it was if this entire ceiling was a glass window. Yeah, I mean, this does look like a pretty massive operations room, which their current operations room would not work if you have, you know, all of your different operations that happen after launch, right? Like, especially if once you reach long duration missions, you have a lot of different personnel that'll be in there for, future launches.
There is a line of sight to even pad A. There's even better line of sight to pad B, but there is a line of sight if I'm looking on Google Maps, because they actually have an updated picture with some of the construction on the office building. There is a line of sight to the pad, so
yeah, I mean, well, what you
Maybe.
don't have is a glass window here, and I don't think you'd want that, because in the event of an airburst, this structure is already going to get rocked pretty heavily, However, you don't want glass breaking in. Like, it doesn't really matter as much over here because you obviously, or ideally, won't have humans in this part of the building during a launch. This is your safe area, which has um, gotten a lot of reinforcement on it as far as the walls go. So you have, um, your wow, the word is failing me for these.
Um, sir, secrets, whatever. I don't
Yeah,
remember.
but I think secrets are for when they're horizontal. But yeah, so
Uh,
you have basically these wall supports plus the corrugated panels that go over the top of them. So this is like a structure. I think we've talked about it during the um, show and tells that this is kind of like a mil spec structure, which is intended to not be possible to break into. And so I think it's got some extra security for that. But I don't know. I think this would be great for
always,
that.
always love the term mil spec because mil spec's always lowest bidder. It's always the funniest term to me. But yeah.
uh, yeah, I mean, this is an awesome structure one way or another. I'm excited to see the outcome of it. Cool. I think it is about 12:30 right now. So, oh wait, sorry, I forget which time zone I'm in sometimes. Now that I'm back in Colorado. But yeah, so we're a little over halfway through the show. So I want to take some questions. I don't want to spend too much time on here, but I know that we probably have some questions since the Sanchez site. So, Astro Joe, what do we got?
Yeah, and I wanted to thank Julian Richards for a $13 PayPal donation, a bit towards fuel. Thank you to the whole team for all you do. So that's much appreciated. Thanks for that support. I did have a couple of late breaking questions come in from our discussion about the drop test. Question from Magnum. During the drop test, where would the chopsticks be positioned? What's the position that's best resembles catch forces?
Well, the crane can't reach where you would actually best resemble it because it'd be at the top of the tower. But
True.
yeah,
Very
I
good
don't
point.
know where they would actually get the best test out of it. They'd have to get it as high as they could over the OLM. As much as they don't want, as much as the people might not want that, that's it's about where it's going to be probably. That'd be my expectation.
Yeah, all too true. Um, a really good question from George M. Zach, could you please tell me where you got your desktop background picture with Starship silhouette? I love it.
Um, I believe this is a render from Ryan Hansen Space? Yeah, it is. It's right here on the bottom. I have like an endless library of things from all the 3D artists that I work with, but yeah, this is from Ryan Hansen Space. I think he posted it to his Patreon. I don't know if he ever made it a public image or not, but it looks real.
Yeah, I thought it was real too. That is really, really cool. Right on. A question from Elliot. Wouldn't a mobile launch mount mean a less robust structure, or would the simplified design mean fewer moving parts that can be damaged?
Wouldn't necessarily mean
Um,
more robust. I mean, just look at the MLPs that NASA has used over the last almost 60 years. Um, you can make it robust. Not saying that you can't.
yeah, the amount of damage that thing sustained after SLS launch was insane. Um, and you could argue that they were expecting that more than SpaceX was, considering that they've launched similar vehicles already. So they were kind of well aware of what would happen. I mean, you did have obviously slightly larger SRBs, but yeah, even with the amount of preparation they had, that was still an incredible amount of damage to that structure.
For sure. I want to thank Drew Nar for a $5 Canadian super chat, saying they should put the first recovered booster in the courtyard between the office and the Star Factory, similar to Hawthorne. Love the show and all the info. Thanks, Drew Nar.
Yeah,
Uh,
I thought it was cool. It would be cool to like place something inside of the inside of the structure. I think one of RGV's thumbnails for their weekly video showed Starhopper inside of here. I think that ship has sailed as far as being able to actually get it in there. I don't know if it would fit, but I think even though we would never see it again, it'd be cool for them to have that inside of here. I don't think you'd be able to put any boosters inside of here, given that this is going to be closed in. But yeah, something inside of that building would be cool. I'm sure they're going to have like raptors suspended from the ceiling and stuff like that. Yeah, that's pretty much guaranteed.
For
If
sure.
if Raptor 3 SN1 survives its testing, it'll be in that building. I
Yeah.
almost guarantee it.
All right, I'd say we can move on.
Cool. Well, let's go ahead. And I know last time I was hosting, somebody got mad that I didn't show the village area, so this time I will. And luckily, this time there's actually something to discuss over here. So there is some more progress on what we believe will be the rec center. Yeah, so I have a better view of it right here. So it looks like the first thing that they're worried about for the rec center is getting the pool situated. So I think this looks like I don't know, like at least a 6 foot deep pool right here. And then probably maybe a hot tub, kiddie pool.
Mhm.
Yeah, because a lot of the workers who work at Starbase do have children, so I think it makes sense to have like a smaller kiddie pool area. So that's kind of what this looks like to me. I don't see the same depth that I do on the large pool right here. But yeah, this was built up so that you wouldn't have to worry about erosion on the outside of it, and you can kind of see how much buildup is necessary because you do have during like storms, you will get a lot of water that builds up through here. Unfortunately, this wasn't taken like a day or two before when there was like really high tide, so you can kind of see where it came up to. But I think this line right here is a pretty good indication of where the water came up to. Yeah, so this is pretty elevated, and I think the rest of the actual structure will probably go over here. If I had to guess, they haven't really started preparing that area yet, but I'm assuming it's not just going to be in this little square right here. I imagine it's probably be a little bit bigger than that. But that's pretty much all there is to discuss with the village. Um, unless there's anything else new down here that I haven't noticed.
As far as I know, there isn't. I mean, they're just continuing to build houses and whatnot. So
Yeah, it's looking great. I love the way it's turned out so far. And it's only going to keep expanding. I think next it'll expand closer towards the launch site, which I don't know about that, but yeah, that's what the plan is as far as we know. Cool. So we'll go ahead and move over to the launch site in that case, starting with Pad B, of course, where we have the CC 8800, which is currently laid down. I wasn't sure. So we are expecting this to stay here until potentially February, or I think it was February was what the rental agreement was for.
January 25th.
January 25th. Cool. Yeah. So I do believe they're in the process of reconfiguring this right now. So I think they'll leave the what do they call the power boom version of this? I can't remember what it's
I
called. I
forgot
want to call it
too.
the power boom, but it's similar to a power boom, but
Booster
it's not.
boom.
Boom booster.
Boom booster. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like that name, honestly. That's probably why it purged itself from my brain. But yeah, so it looks like they're in the process of a reconfiguration, and they may be mostly done with that, but they're not really in a rush to get it back up. I think maybe the next thing we'll see it lift, which I don't know if it's necessary for this crane to do it, but it probably will be, would be the drawworks whenever that shows up. So it'll need to lift the drawworks, and then we'll also obviously see it lift the carriage and chopsticks once they're mated together. I think a lot of people were expecting that was going to happen sooner rather than later. I remember some mention of the area being cleared over here and flattened out, but I'm not seeing it.
No, I don't think. I think they want to catch before they put those on there. Hence why they're pushing so hard to get a catch. But then there's also the thing of, and I think they should just fly right now, but that's just me. But I think they're gonna wait for a catch before they put those on the tower. I don't know how long that's gonna take though, but I think that's what they're waiting for. see if they have to make any major changes to it.
I think they're inevitably going to have to make changes to it.
Yeah.
We've already seen some reinforcements that they're probably going to end up doing to it, which I'm surprised that they haven't started yet. Um, but I don't know. I don't know if the catch necessarily should get in the way of it, other than the fact that you may potentially have them installed before you have the drawworks um, installed as well too. So it would just be sitting there at the base of the tower, which with a pressure wave, it could lift it up and allow it to fall back down. Albeit it wouldn't go very high, but it's still enough to potentially cause damage. We've seen how the chopsticks reacted to the Booster 7 explosion. So that is a good point that it's probably a good idea to have them supported. But I think one of the bigger things that's stopping them from doing it is just the fact that they'll be in the way. So if we look at it
They got
from this angle, they'll be over the flame trench, and that's just completely in the way of everything else right now. So I think that is the main reason why you have that long wait. I mean, yeah, you would basically have to leave them at the bottom of the tower. You couldn't lift them up without the winch, and they're still pouring concrete. I don't know where they've reached right now. It's tough
I
to
think
tell.
they're on module 3 right now. Because you can see the break in the line.
Yeah,
So if you go
there's a
up
break
one,
right
there's
here.
an elbow.
Oh wait, is
right
that the
there.
hose?
That's the elbow hose. Yeah, they're on 3 right now. So I would expect them to want to finish the tower before they put those on.
Yeah.
Just so it's out of the way, and then get the drawworks installed, and then I don't think they'll work on them, but I think they'll rise them up the tower, assuming they don't have the scaffolding on anymore, just to get them out of the way as they build the OLM, if they want to do it that way. Which is
For
why
sure.
they're pushing so hard to get the tower done as quick as they can.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we're during when they were building the first tower, we weren't really doing these shows back then. So it's nice that we are now, that we can point out things like this, so that people are aware of it. Because it's really shocking how many people were unaware that there's concrete inside of the columns. So
Hey.
yeah, y'all can see that this is not exactly a fast process. They do one leg at a time, one level at a time, and they're still. I'm not sure where they're at with welding, but it looks like they may
Pretty
have
much
reached the top.
done. And I think they're on 4 to 5 with putting in the track pieces. It's 4 to 5.
Oh, yeah, they've
Yeah,
added
there
them
you go.
down
Yeah,
here.
there.
Yeah. So there's
Um,
the gaps where they have to add the tracks, which I don't know if it matters if they wait before or until after the concrete is there.
well, I mean, they've been putting them in. They've been putting them in as soon as they finish welding and grinding everything down, so it's all even and everything. I
Right.
remember when they built that first tower, I did not know that they were filled with concrete. I was like, and then everyone showed me the evidence. I'm like, oh, well then, all right, I guess I was wrong. I was just like,
Yeah. I can't even tell you how many arguments I was in about that. It's kind of like the mobile launch mount. Every time I mention something, there's like an argument about it until we finally show proof of it. But yeah, so we have.
I remember the 20 boot a Raptor QD thing. I didn't want to believe that SpaceX was actually going to do that because in my mind it was way too many failure points. I was like, "Oh, really? They actually did it?" Yeah, I remember that.
That was actually a really funny story because I think as far as I know, I think I was the first person to point that out, because I don't think anybody really caught on to it when Sam Patel mentioned it during the Everyday Astronaut episode. And so I was actually trying to get somebody to get up close and get images of it to prove it because we didn't have proof of it. And then I would say her name, but I know she works for NASA now, so I won't. But she got really close and got some pictures of it. Then Mauricio got more pictures of it, and then like shortly after that, we actually saw the first test of that system, and that's when people finally started to believe that it was real. But yeah, I mean, I think that's one of those things that like, until you see it, you'd be like, there's no way they're gonna use the launch mount to start the outer 20 engines, and I don't know. I think people say that about almost everything that they do. There's no way they're gonna do that, and then they do. So yeah, we got, let's see. So they're up at the third module. So they've got 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 left to do. Well, I guess 9 technically.
Mm.
Yeah. So they're making progress, but still got a ways to go on that. This is all the stuff that goes into getting a tower operational. It's not quite as fast as just stacking it and then putting the chopsticks on and being ready for a launch. There's a lot of work that goes into this, and beyond that, there's going to be a lot of reinforcement work. I think once this tower is completed too, because it appears that what they've did on the first tower and subsequently did on this tower is not enough as far as the diagonal members go. It looks like they want some additional reinforcement on those. So I believe we're going to see a lot of work to reinforce this tower once most of this stuff is out of the way. All right, let's move on to the flame trench, which is really exciting. So as of this week, it appears that all of the equipment that was used to install these wow, the name always slips my mind.
Sheet piles.
Yes, yeah, sheet piling. The equipment that was used to bang these into the ground is now gone. So this looks like all there is going to be. So now it's pretty good idea of what we're seeing here. So basically, you just have your trench, and then you have your another, I guess, excavation where all of the commodities are going to go. So I'm pretty sure this will probably mostly be large water piping that goes over here, and enter through the side of the deluge system. That's kind of what I don't expect. Well, on the first launch mount, it did have the supply, so the liquid oxygen and liquid methane supply pipes went onto the far side of the launch mount. I don't know how that would work with this one unless the QD was on the backside. Because, like I said, if we're expecting a mobile launch mount, I don't know if we should expect all of that cryo piping to be on the launch mount itself. It wouldn't necessarily be too difficult to do that. I guess you would just have a quick disconnect down below and another one up top for the booster, like one to join it to the pad and another one to join it to the booster, which is pretty much how NASA's MLP works, right?
Yeah, they have the QDs. They have the QDs down near the boosters, near the SRBs. They'll that hook into them. Then they have the QDs that are near the engine section. And then of course they have one going up the tower for each of the specific stage, like the ICPS,
Right.
and then of course up as it goes. So yeah, and then of course there all the lines hook in. I don't remember how it takes them a couple of days to hook in the MLP to electrical cryo commodity lines when they roll it over the
Water.
pad itself. Yeah, water. It takes a while to hook it all in. But yeah, it's kind of like a QD setup. I haven't actually seen pictures of it, but it's something like that.
Let me get a backside image over here, if I have one. This might be the best backside image. So yeah, you can see that the this goes basically down past the front of the building, and it's got a pretty good amount of space between that. Maybe I can see it right here. Yeah. So it's tough to tell. I'm actually surprised that there's not more sheet piling through here because it looks like there should be. Right now, we do see some of the concrete culverts down here, which theoretically could go inside of here, but I don't think they will. I think this is for something else, because I believe that we should see large water pipes going through here more than anything. And I think that all of the rest of the commodities will probably come in through the front, whether it's around the front side or the back side. Tough to say right now. But yeah, they're preparing at least to start laying these culverts in the ground, which really says how far they are into this process, because that was something that didn't come until the tower was long after it was fully stacked on the first. I think by the time they were installing the cryo pipes was when Elon was saying there was going to be a static fire in 2 weeks, which was, yeah, I made a whole video about that. I'm not going to go into right now, but I think we're getting to the point where they'll start actually joining the two tank farms. Now that most of the major groundwork is complete, I'm honestly not sure whether or not we'll see a bunch of groundwork over in this area. I believe there'll at least need to be some in order to get your cryotubing. I think that's what the path that it showed was coming along here into the backside or something like that.
Yeah, my guess is we're still leftovers of the old landing pad area. That's going to be they're going to add more tanks in for a little bit more capacity, and then my guess it'll be a whole new set of subcoolers and pumps because I think they're just going to do a separate set for Pad B. I think that makes the most sense. At least to me, it does. And then they'll route that and split it up between the tower and the OLM.
I would
That would
like
be
to
my
see
guess.
a completely different set of methane pumps or methane storage tanks.
Yeah,
That
I'd
was
like
my
to see some
go-to.
or I mean, they do have that old tank they still haven't hooked up yet. You know
Uh,
the one that's
Talking about this one?
yeah, that one.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
if
I
you're not
think it'd
going
be
to
nice
use
to
it,
see this like
get rid of it.
duplicated, like mirrored across here.
That's I don't think they're going to put that many in. I think they'll put enough in so that they can do a launch from pad A and from pad B without having to refill. I think that's how much they'll add in. Which they don't need to duplicate the pad. They don't need to duplicate it. They need to put like 50 to 70% more tanks or something along those lines in there. I don't think they need to double it, but um,
I think
yeah,
it would be weird having your methane storage split between two places if they're not like two separate storages altogether.
yeah,
But we'll see. That's
yeah,
into the heavy speculation zone.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, tons of groundwork. We're still yet to see whether or not they're going to keep this controls bunker down here, which I would be surprised if it stays. It doesn't have anywhere near the amount of like cooling system that this one has. So I imagine whatever's in this building eats up a significant more amount of power than what was in this building, which makes a ton of sense because all your power for all of the pumps on both sides, everything that is inside of this bunker, this entire system is powered basically. This is the controls building for all of that. So it makes sense that they have a way larger like cooling HVAC setup over here. But I don't think this building could withstand the heat generated by an equivalent structure with the equivalent equipment inside of here.
I think they'll
Um,
rebuild it, make a new one for the new pad over,
yeah,
and then
I'm
let
wondering
them
why
all.
they're taking so long to do that. I'm surprised it hasn't been deleted already.
Hmm. I don't think they're still using it. I mean,
Certainly not.
yeah. So like, I don't know. It's SpaceX. Yeah, it's SpaceX.
I guess moving all the equipment out first makes sense. This was also, I think, somewhat of a controls building for the entire site. So I know they had like um, TV boards set up in here that showed the status of all the other areas on the site. Um, Not sure if it was like a main security type area or if it was just like a auxiliary one, but we do know that was also in this building as well. Cool. And I imagine we probably have some Pat B questions, so let's go ahead and touch on those.
All right. First off, I want to thank Bob Fillmore for a Canadian Super Chat, $27.99. Thanks for a fun tour of Starbase. Thanks, Bob. We appreciate that, and we enjoyed doing it. Pedro Baptista, chopsticks are mounted on top of each other on their pivot point, right? Making one of them a little taller than the other. Can you spot the offset of that difference in order to make a flat surface?
Um, that is true, but I think the rails are still level with each other.
They're designed, even though they're sitting on there, they're designed to be the same level, as far as I remember. Otherwise, you'd see a pretty decent tip every time. You wouldn't be able to really stack a vehicle that way. The structure when it's sliding to the pins, the structure is designed to be level between each other. So Like it's level.
There's an excellent shot of it right there.
I'm looking for another one that shows. It's really tough to see what's happening here. But yeah, I believe the mounting points for all of this stuff is just lower than it is on this side.
Great
I
observation,
want to
though.
say it almost looks like this arm is coming down a little bit while this one goes up a little bit. But
It's hard to tell.
yeah, it's hard to tell without looking at it level. I'm pretty sure that's what's happening though.
All right. This one may be a little bit late, or maybe they're watching behind. Oh, hey, I want to thank 55 Ship Guy Steve for gifting 5 memberships. Thanks for that support, keeping RGV in the air. But Ben Creasy Vision for a $4.99 super chat says, as a data center engineer, the square hole in the office building looks like a cooling yard and will probably be hidden by a wall.
Really quick, I just saw Jake's comment in the chat, and to answer his question, the answer is no. So we're talking about this one or this one?
I'm pretty sure the square.
Yeah.
Okay. And what did he suggest it was?
Suggesting, oh shoot,
Cooling
I
yard, I
deleted
think it was.
Cooling yard, yeah.
I think they set that up, didn't they? They set up the cooling pipes behind the Star Factory? Question mark.
Over here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
think.
think this is basically like a chilled water system for the office building. So it goes underground and then up through here into the building.
All right. JS Web Productions asking, when do you think they will install the Lightning Tower on Tower B? Now that the crane is getting reconfigured, will it be tall enough to do so?
I don't even have one on A.
It does.
They have,
Um,
well, it's more of a weather station, a lightning tower. But anyways,
yeah, I can't remember. I think they constructed this section by section.
yeah,
So they didn't
did.
necessarily need the crane because they just brought the little sections up in the elevator, and so it wasn't necessary for the crane for this. But I don't know with pad B when they'll do that. I don't know if it's necessary until the tower's operational because it was pretty late when they installed it on the first tower, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I don't know. Tough to predict when they're going to install that.
Yeah, for sure. Sergeant Snipey has a question for Zach. How would a stand strong enough to withhold a fully fueled stack be movable without it being impractical to move? That's not a thing.
I mean, it would be definitely a heavy structure, that's for sure. But what I'm assuming is that it won't be anywhere near as tall as the first launch mount. So a good amount of the weight of that structure comes in just the length of those legs. But I don't think, I mean, and for one, you have 2 less legs. They'll probably be filled with concrete if I had to guess. But you have to remember that the actual transport stand for the boosters is not light at all. So first you have the actual weight of the SPMTs, the weight of the transport stand itself, which is pretty heavy. You also have the weight of the booster, the dry mass, which is like somewhere between 250 to 270 tons, plus all of the counterweights. I think they still use counterweights for the new transport stands, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they don't use nearly as many though, because the transfer
Yeah.
stands are heavier. But yeah, they still
But
use.
it's at least 80 tons, if not 100.
Yeah,
yeah, I'm
trying
gonna have to go
remember
check
how
on
much
that.
it is.
Yeah, but it's a lot of weight. I mean, it's pushing, if I had to guess, at least 400 tons, if not more. So the actual launch mount itself, when it was transported, this just the deck was around 400 tons. and they did that just fine. I think they damaged the road in the process, but they've since reinforced the road, so it's more, um, it's in a better state to take that kind of weight. But yeah, it shouldn't need to be anywhere near as tall as this structure because you have the trench below it. So, theoretically, however deep the trench is, you can subtract off of the height of the launch mount, which at the same time also makes the tower itself. I'm sorry, I went the wrong way. It also makes the tower itself technically taller than the other one because the launch mount is closer to the ground. So, yeah, I don't think that it would be as heavy as some people are expecting it to, and will never have a booster on top of it while being transported.
Sounds reasonable to me. Michael Bertoli asking, will the Flame Trench have 2 exits for the plume?
As far as we can tell, that's what it looks like so far. An exit on either side, so it's basically uh, twice the exit volume, I guess, of the static fire stand at Massey's, which baffles me a little bit. I was expecting a 4-way trench because you have 4 times the engines.
You have a lot more engines, a lot more power. But
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I don't know. It really depends on how they design the trench or how they design the deflector itself. And I always harken back to the fact that most other launch pads only have one, maybe 2 exits. I mean, it's not 39A, but 39A only has 1 exit because it's not like they're going to. It'd be cool if SpaceX went up and used 52,000 cubic meters of concrete when building this, but I don't think they are. You know.
Yeah, so I think it's like 5.5 times more engines actually, right? But I did see somebody say that V3 will have 35 Raptors. We do not know that. That's speculation. But it can have up to 35. It's permitted for up to 35. That doesn't necessarily mean it will. But again, that's something that this pad should be prepared for, whether it's going to happen right away or not. I mean, 2 additional engines doesn't sound like that much, but it's a lot for sure. Yeah, again, I'm a little bit surprised that it's not going in 4 directions, given how much volume of exhaust is going to come out of this. But yeah, we'll see how it works out.
All right, let's break out our crystal balls. Raphael Levitt asking, is Starship V2 or V3 flying for HLS Artemis 3? Assuming SpaceX at some point will have to perform an actual in-space fuel transfer Starship to Starship and send fuel depot ahead of Artemis 3.
Is that asking what version will fly it?
Yeah, I guess so. Is Starship V2 or V3 flying for HLS Artemis 3?
One of them will be. I don't know which. Because like
Yeah, way too early to tell.
when you look at the program where it is now, I know Elon said cargo at least the Starship to Mars by 26 and a crewed Starship to 2028. And I will break all of your windows and mirrors and tell you they'd be lucky to get HLS to the moon by 2028. A crewed HLS on the moon by 2028 right now, where this program is. They'd be lucky to. That's
one thing I do want to mention in regards to HLS. So this is something that happened this week as well too, and this is relevant because we haven't seen a real test article of HLS. So I mean, it's either going to be V2 or V3. I'm expecting V3 probably, although increasing the size of the vehicle that's going to be landing on the moon is mind-boggling to me. But yeah, so this right here is basically the access hatch, the crew access hatch for the test article for HLS. And I believe, yeah, the space engineer was the one who identified this. So this basically showed up to Starbase on the 9th. about 6 days ago. And this was previously at Hawthorne. So this is the slanted roof that you can see on it right here. And then I'm sure lots of us have seen pictures of the inside of this. So I think this was booster. Wow, I can't remember which booster it came from.
15s. It might have been 15's
Yeah, I thought it was
header.
15, but it just sounds too late. It sounds too late in the list because we've
I think
just
it's
seen booster
15's
15
header.
revealed
Yeah.
now. Okay, yeah. So booster 15's header tank was basically retrofitted for this module, and so that's what we've basically seen arrive back at Starbase, and it's going into the Star Factory, which in my mind only says one thing, which is that they're probably going to integrate it into an actual test article soon. And it'd be really awesome if it happened on the glass side of the building, so we could actually
Not that
identify
lucky.
that nose cone. Right? I mean, it's got to be on somewhere on that side of the building, considering it's a nose cone. But whether or
Yep,
not it'll
but
be in an area where we can see it through the glass is a whole nother story.
yeah.
Yeah. But exciting news right there. And sorry, go ahead and continue with the questions, Astro Joe.
Sure thing. And Michael Bertoldi also asking, what do you think the deluge will look like for OLM2?
Well, it's going to be 3 times larger, for one. So bigger water pipes and or more water pipes, 3 times the water storage. And I think potentially, hopefully, they won't have the same problem that they had with the other launch pad, because the water will be coming out of the actual flame bucket. And still yet to see what that's going to actually look like. But it's going to be basically contained within the trench for the most part, I think. Um, I imagine some of it will still come out the ends, but probably nowhere near as much will end up in the actual wetlands as what we see currently. Although it's tough to say, given that it's going to be 3 times as much water. I wonder how they're going to like test that without performing a static fire at the same time, because you'll just end up with a trench full of water. But yeah, it should be mostly contained within the trench. I imagine there'll be something on top of it as well too, to actually cool down the top surface. But well, we did talk about this at the beginning of the show. That is actually kind of difficult, because you can't just like spray jets at it from a distance, because they'll never reach the table, because the plume will just vaporize the water before it even gets there. So, I mean, if you have water coming from the top of the deck, it has to come from the actual structure itself and not spraying towards it from somewhere else. So that'll be interesting to see how they end up doing something like that. But yeah, potentially something above deck as well as in the actual trench itself.
All right, and along those same lines, Tijin asking, how would they move the OLM over the flame trench? Moving platform or with a crane?
Definitely no cranes. It should be a platform, so I doubt there'll be enough space on this side for it to straddle the trench. So more than likely, you'll probably have a platform that um, potentially moves over to this side. You do have enough space for it over there, so that platform can. But again, you probably maybe want a retention pond, so that's a big question. So it could potentially move over into that direction, or it can come over in this direction, which would potentially be safer, I guess. But yeah, it'll just need to move to either side, or it could go in this direction as well too, over the actual trench itself. That's not impossible. Um, it's long enough to do so. I think it would just go all the way to the end of the trench. But yeah, and this gets them around. That platform gets them around the issue that was preventing them in the first place from doing a trench, because they'll still have an access platform that allows them um, to move their maintenance structure underneath the actual launch mount, which I imagine will be less likely to be needed in the first place. But yeah, they should still have access with that platform, and then you just drive up from the side right here.
All right, cool. I want to thank Dave Avery for gifting 5 memberships. Thanks for that support. Appreciate you, Dave. And a question from Pete's Guide, is SpaceX working on a plan to do a manned moon landing without a SLS?
Uh,
Probably.
Another crystal
Um,
ball question.
I would assume at some point that they either are confident enough in the system that they straight launch on an HLS version, or even or updated version of HLS, which would be their own moon lander for their own moon base if they so choose to build one. Which is either next decade or the decade after that. That's all I'm gonna say. But yeah, that's kind of where they're at. They need to get to orbit first and try to refuel.
helps.
Like SpaceX has a lot of milestones they have yet to complete to prove this system works. So they need to do that first before they start doing anything like that.
Agreed.
All right. Pete Scott asking, why is the roof of the HLS airlock slanted?
No idea.
No idea.
Yeah, same here. Mini rocketry. Do we have any indications on what or how the ship quick disconnect will look?
We do not. We haven't seen the actual QD arm. It's still in Florida, and the fact that it hasn't been transported here is a sign that they're going to be redesigning it altogether. So, yeah, it's all we know about it is that it has 4 hinge points versus 2, and that's all we know.
All right, I'm pretty well caught up on all the questions. I just want to thank Ninja Decimator, pew pew pew, for a $4.99 super chat, who says, just wanted to say thanks for all you guys do. Amazing photos and commentary. Keep up the great work. We appreciate you, Ninja Decimator. Appreciate that a bunch. Thanks for all the support, everyone. Please don't forget to hit that like button before you leave.
Awesome. Well, yeah, if you guys haven't hit that like button, as Astro Joe said, please do us a favor and do that. As I always say, we try not to mention it too many times during the stream, but we do appreciate all of y'all doing that for us, and I can see those numbers shooting up right now. So thanks to everybody who got up off the couch to hit that like button for us. We appreciate y'all. And also want to thank Ryan Weber for joining us today. It's awesome having some help. It's tough getting myself caught up after my 2 weeks at work, so always appreciate whoever comes in to help with that. And again, appreciate you like doing some crosswork with us with NSF. Why do I keep saying SNF?
I don't know.
So yeah, thank you for joining us today. And also huge shout out as always to Mauricio for getting up there and fighting through the clouds to get us these awesome images. It's definitely not easy, and even tougher when you take the first half of your images and they're all shaded and blocked by clouds. So you got to stay up there until you get what you want. So thanks, Mauricio, for always being up there and helping us to continue to do this show every week. And also all the donations from everybody who's helping him to be able to do that. I just saw a $19 donation from Rocket come in here. So thank you for that. And with that, I guess I will pass it off to Ryan, and I'll sign off, and hopefully I will see you all next week.
See you, Zach. I think we just had Pad A to really talk about left. I think it was.
Oh, did we not talk about Pat A?
Did we?
Wow.
Or I'm
Did I
trying
just
to
end the
remember
show
if we
early?
talked about the fact that they're painting the OLM.
That was awkward. All right. Well, yeah.
Nice one.
Ignore everything I just said, y'all. We got a little more to go.
I was like, did we? I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, did we? Because they painted the boosted QD, they painted the OLM deck, plus all the work they're
Yeah.
still doing.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I think I
It
just got hungry
happens.
for lunch right there.
Oh.
Yeah, so Pad A. As Ryan was saying, they painted, they're in the process of painting the deck of the launch mount, which looks pretty awesome. If only it could stay like that.
Right.
And what else did you say they painted this week?
They painted the boosted QDs nice, all painted, and they're taking this. They took all the scaffolding apart from inside the ring too. So
Yeah, it looks like most of that scaffolding is being disassembled, and it looks like a lot of the scaffolding on at least this side of the tower has gone away.
I should have prefaced it and said, nah, it doesn't matter. Let's not talk about Pad 8. There's nothing going on there, and just like sign off.
Yeah, I mean the amount of the aerial work platforms that are up here is crazy. I think there's, let's see, 8 right there. Or sorry, 4. I think there's one under here that I can't see. 8.
It's like 13 or something. I think
Wow.
I counted.
Yeah, crazy. Got a lot of work. What kind of crane is that? Oh, that's just another one.
The black lift.
Wow, that's a
all.
cool one. It looks cool when it's black.
Hmm.
Yeah, so got tons of work up here, and they've basically been not only doing the reinforcements on the, this is not a great view, reinforcements on the chopstick arms, but also on the tower itself. So without an updated ground image, I do have some ground images from last week, and I could be wrong. Maybe Ryan has seen this and can correct me if I am. But on these vertical members right here, they have not yet installed the.
They're starting to.
the
Well, it's
yeah,
not. They're
so
not actually doing those. They're doing like really long reinforcements that kind of go down a good chunk of the arm. I'd have to go find pictures somewhere. But they're
okay,
yeah, they're installing like just thin rods that go down it rather than around just the weld point itself. So it's kind of an
okay,
odd one.
interesting. Yeah, so I mean, we do have the reinforcements on some of the other members, which y'all can see here, thanks to the all the crud on the outside of it. They're already rusted, so makes those stitches easier to see. And then they added these on a few weeks ago as well too. And I do wonder if they still need to go back and finish the weld on these, because these do seem like they're just tack welded on. You can see like a weld here,
Yeah.
one right here, but they're not along this entire length. So I would not be surprised to see them go back and complete the welding around the entire perimeter, which I also don't think has been done for any of these. So that'll be interesting to see how long that process takes, if they do it at all. I would imagine that just simply tack welding it on wouldn't necessarily give you the strength that you're going for here, but maybe it would.
You can also see the putting shielding on the valve blocks / manifolds for the actuators. They're finally putting those on.
Yeah, they got
Which is
some
nice.
brackets over here for mounting shielding to those. And
Yeah.
isn't it on this side too? Like on
Yeah,
the bottom of
they're
it
starting to
right here?
install it too. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll
Which
see
is
them
about time.
enclose those, right? Oh, wait, this is a whole box right here
Yeah.
already over it, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty awesome. So basically, that's the finished version of what this will look like.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
I would like to see. I mean, you're kind of limited with how much you can do and keep the arms mobile.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would like to see even more protection over some of the um, hydraulic lines. That would be nice. And eventually, we are expecting that they will actually clad the arms. It would be a horrible idea with this set of arms, given um, their length, how much of an effect it already has on the tower when you close these. But
Oh yeah, that would be
eventually,
way too much weight. Way too
you
much.
know, at the same time, I'm not sure, because the towers are meant to sway, like they're
Yes, but they're not meant to
designed.
twist. Which
Fact.
this one kind of twisted a little bit when they did that full sim last week. Which was a tad iffy, to say the least. But I do find it
Yeah,
funny they removed the stop and they haven't put it back on yet. I'm thinking the stop's gone for good. They don't, because
for
what's
the
the point of
chopsticks.
what's the point of a stop if the vehicle's going to stop it?
Oh, are you talking about these ones?
Yeah, the stop's there.
Oh, yeah, I don't think they were ever going to return those.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they were even necessary in the first place, honestly. But yeah, it very interesting getting rid of those. I think they may just not have wanted them to be colliding into each other. Yeah, so still lots of work going on here. I haven't actually seen a ton of work lifts up there during the last 2 days, so I don't know. Maybe they're getting close to being done with that, and then we'll see the next set of
Like
tests for.
6 or 7 up there right now.
Yeah, there is.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess they weren't up there when I checked before the show.
Yeah, that might have been
um,
lunch break.
yeah, and then we also have the actual tower. Oh, this is trippy. Being able to see both towers in the same frame like this.
It's weird.
Let's see. I wanted to see higher
One
up the
looks so
tower.
much like the Pad B tower looks so much better than Pad A tower.
For
They
now.
must have. Well, it also looks shinier than this one did to begin with. I think they put. I wonder if they put another coating on those sections. Because I
think they
mean,
did.
those sections are not. They're not that much older than Tower 1, relatively, because of when they built it. It may only be like several months in between them. Because they were
I
also,
think there's
they
a
also sat out
strong. There's a strong possibility that these are two different types of steel.
That could be true as well.
Yeah. I think it makes sense that there would be two different types of steel here, because they have too many different types of steel on the actual tower itself. So you have each of these gusset plates are a different type of steel than the actual cross beams, which is fine, except when you want to weld them, then you have different rates of expansion, thermal expansion. So that's not necessarily a good thing. But I was looking for the actual reinforcements on the actual
It's up
gusset
top.
plates, but they're
There's
so they haven't done them
they have
down
two
well.
sets. They have 2 sets behind the cladding, and then you have to go to the top of the tower for the rest of them. Yeah.
Okay,
Up,
yeah, you can see them up
up,
here.
even farther up there.
Well, you can see some of them down here,
Yeah.
and then the larger gusset
Yeah.
plates that they added onto here and onto the edges of here as well too. So lots of reinforcement to address the swaying of the tower or the twisting. I'm honestly not sure how much help that's going to be, but surely they've done the calculations that told them that it's worth doing. So um, maybe next time we'll see a little bit difference when they actually do that catch simulation after all of this is completed. And I was wrong about the scaffolding being removed because there's still a ton of it up there, but this was from last week, so I don't know if this still exists this week. Cool. Anything else with Pad A that I didn't mention? Still working on the roof.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything else that they're doing to it. It's all sticks, all chopstick work.
This is going to be hilarious to me if they don't actually finish this and they just leave it like that.
That would be funny. It looks like they're taking that scaffolding down on top of the tower, though. Looks like they're finishing up with those reinforcements. So
yeah, I see some weird vertical members going across the front on this side, which is confusing me. Wish I had a ground shot for that. I'm sure I'll be able to look on some of the Lab Padre cams today and see what that looks like. Cool. Yeah, I think that just about covers everything for this week. I guess we'll do one more round of questions, and then we'll end the show for real this time.
Yeah, since sign off version 1.0, I do have a couple of questions. One from Michael Bertoldi. Do you think the tower wobble will do bad for a catch?
No.
but it'll be fine.
I want to invite people to imagine what would happen if there wasn't concrete in the columns. Yeah.
Or if there wasn't a tower wobble, if the tower didn't wobble, I mean, you need flexibility in a structure like that. Otherwise, it's gonna just snap when you put too much load on it rather than bend.
Agreed. The wobble never hurt nobody.
There you go.
Nope.
All right, question from Raphael Levitt. What's wrong with Ship 32 that it won't fly, or is it simply the logistics with V2 ship likely being ready?
Oh, 32 is long dead.
Is it though?
I mean, here's the thing. Ship 31 It has its engines, it's had cryo, and now it needs a static fire plus a heat shield change. That's about it to get it ready for flying, plus whatever else they have to do. Ship 33 is getting its aft flaps and its heat shield completed, which is already farther along than Ship 32, mind you. And not only that, 32 has been sitting there for 9 months doing nothing. No cleaning, no nothing. Just 9 months sitting out in salt-laden Texas air, not getting touched. And not only that, it was built in November of... I'm sorry, it's dead. Dead.
Ship
They're not
26 sat
flying
out
it.
there for a long time before they did the static fire test with
They're not flying it. They're not.
it.
Why would you fly it when 33 is going to be ready sooner? Why?
Yeah, I suppose. I guess one of the big reasons is to not have to strip all the tiles off of it again. But I honestly can't think of any other reasons unless there's just a general mistake in construction with it. Like, I can't see a reason not to fly it.
Yeah, I don't unless they break it more than they did Booster 7 and Ship 31, 33's flying. And those two, the 31 act anomaly was, yeah, they could have fried a bunch of stuff that's just replacing the raceway plus probably some electronics. They replaced the whole downcomer and then flew that booster. Like,
yeah.
No, it's flying. 33 will fly unless they crunch the ship like the Mythbusters did to that tanker car. I mean, yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Do we have any other?
I'll take one more question before sign off block 2 from Neo Brandigan. What do you think happens with Booster if it nails the catch for Flight 5?
I think they will take it back to the high bay or the mega bay, sorry, and just kind of tear it down and examine everything, just to kind of get some additional data to figure out if there's anything that they didn't consider prior to the, like additional wear on the vehicle that they weren't expecting to happen.
All right, I'd say we can commence with sign off version 2.0.
Cool. Before we go, I do want to mention something that I have seen. I do read a lot of the comments after the videos are over and also in the chat occasionally, and I have seen this come up multiple times, so I figured it's worth addressing. Some people do think that it's necessarily not worth this show being as long as it is, and that may be true, but we also do have the Starbase Weekly short recap videos for the people who like a more condensed form of things. So this is intended for people who like to go through in detail of pretty much everything that's out here, and obviously there's a ton of ground to cover, so it does take some time to get through everything. And we do a lot of speculation along the way, but in my opinion, that's pretty much, you can't really cover Starship without speculating. So a lot of people have these thoughts about what's going on out here, and they would like to share it and see other people's opinions on it. So this is really the only way we're able to do that, and actually take questions from the audience and whatnot. So if you don't like the length of these shows, I welcome you to watch those short recaps. But we've been kind of doing this for about 133 episodes at this point. So most of the audience seems to enjoy it, and hopefully that's true for most of y'all. So with that, I will go ahead and sign off for today. And hopefully I will see all y'all next week. And hopefully the weather gods play nice with us as well, so that we're able to get a nice clear flyover like this week. I will pass this over to Ryan.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure coming on. Thanks guys for giving me the opportunity. I love always coming on here talking Starship. It's always a fun thing. So thanks.
Yeah, it's awesome. Awesome collaboration. We appreciate your time and your speculation expertise, both you, Zach, and Ryan. Appreciate RGV for getting the photos every week. I enjoy spending this time with you every week, not only on show and tells, but here on the live show. I say more photos, more better. Anyway, thank you all. Appreciate the cool chat. Appreciate the generosity of everybody gifting and donating. And with that, most engines cut off. Hot staging confirmed. Love you. Bye.